Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the channel and welcome to part 3 of the dash swap, column swap, cluster swap, just all sorts of swaps on this 7.3 2001. So on this episode, we're gonna go ahead and swap the harness from one dash to another, and then we're gonna deal with the cluster helper from SwapHelper.com. So on the previous episode, part 2, we finished up and installed Vent Helper from SwapHelper.com, and on this episode we're going to be doing Cluster Helper from them as well. And honestly guys, this is a game changer for those of you guys that want to do dash swapping, column swapping, cluster swapping, all that stuff. So and this is one of the reasons why I've been holding off on doing the dash swaps and the column swaps, because I can do the basic wiring, you know, run a wire from point A to point B, or add a wire somewhere, or solder some wires here and there. I can do that, but when it comes to like some kind of programming or wiring diagnostics or trying to find where the problem is in wiring, that's my weak spot. So when I find out that SwapHelper is offering kits for the columns, for the clusters, for, you know, all sorts of stuff, I just had to jump on it. So in this episode, we're gonna go ahead and install this module on top of the cluster here. On the module itself, you got 11 to 16 cluster and you got the 8 to 10 cluster. So you don't want to mess these up, because that's going to mess up your cluster, or you know, it's going to mess up the module, it's going to mess up who knows what else. So you don't want to mess that up. So in my case, I have a 2008 to 10 cluster. The way this mounts, you got the little mounting bolt, mounting holes right here. That's going to go like that. You remove those two screws over here, one here, one there. This piece goes like that, and you secure it to the cluster. So now that's going to be in place. Then you take this cable and you plug it in here. I'm going to double check in the instructions later when I'm going to be installing it. And then over here, you plug it in correctly to which cluster year you have. Also, you don't want to mess this up. I'm going to also double check to make sure I plug this in correctly, so it's not, you know, backwards or this way or whatever. So that's going to be something that I'm going to be double checking and triple checking to make sure I plug that in correctly. By the way, I also picked up a new AC control, you know, unit over here. I picked up one from 05 to 7. Those are the ones that will be different, and then they're going to plug into the new face cover. But the plugs in the back are pretty much going to be straight plug and play. There's not going to be any modification needed. So once that comes in, I'll show you how that goes. I picked it up like 40 bucks on eBay. There's a few of them. Some of them are like 70 bucks, 80 bucks, 90 bucks. But I found one for 40 bucks. So I just picked that up, and it should be here in a few days. So we'll see how that goes when that arrives. Alright, so the first things first, I'm going to remove this whole harness off of the 2008 and 10 dash, get the frame painted, and once we remove the harness from that end, I'm going to start removing this one from the 01. Now, one word of advice, just take pictures of everything that you're removing, how it goes, so it gives you a better idea when you need to reinstall it. Just basically, you know, put it how it was kind of, and then just take a picture of it so you know kind of exactly how it was, and then you can play with it in the new dash and kind of, you know, run it exactly how you want it. But once you know how it was, you have a better idea of how you need to put it in, and how you know what you can do to modify it a little bit to make it a little bit more comfortable for you. But that's the idea. That's what I usually do if I remove something a little bit technical. Try to take pictures of all different angles. That way it makes it a little bit easier later on when I need to install it. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start removing the harness on that dash, and then did this dash, and then I'm going to probably go ahead and remove the panel on the front here, and then try to clean up and paint the frame. Alright guys, and here's what we got so far. Now I got the frame all stripped and all the dash panels and wiring, everything removed. I ended up scuffing the whole frame the best I could. Obviously it's not going to be perfect. To get it perfect, you got to get it sandblasted and all that stuff, but it's going to be underneath the dash. Nobody really cares. But I went ahead and scuffed it the best that I could, all the edges, all the corners that I could reach, and then I cleaned it with paint thinner. So now it has to dry for a bit because paint thinner takes a little bit of time to dry, and acetone just kind of dries too fast, so it doesn't give you a chance to wipe off as much dirt or rust or dust as good as paint thinner does, because it doesn't dry as fast. And here's what we got with the frame so far. Basically ended up scuffing the whole frame by hand, because obviously with the wire disc it's a lot harder. Scuffed the whole thing, then I wiped it with paint thinner and made sure that all that dust and debris is off, and then I started spraying with the rust encapsulator, because there's a lot of rust that you can't just remove on the frame. Obviously it's a lot harder unless you sandblast the whole thing. And then I went ahead and sprayed with that, and that's basically what it does. It converts it from rust to, you know, you basically spray it directly over rust, and then you can just top coat it with whatever. And then I was thinking to maybe top coat it with another black layer, but I figured why not use something like, you know, silver or aluminum. I have a few cans that I used on engine blocks before. I figured why not? Why not try it, paint it like aluminum or gray, and see how it turns out. That way, when I do the wiring will stand out, and then maybe it'll look better. Maybe it'll be easier to see underneath the dash because it's going to be a brighter color. But anyways, I figured I might as well do something different besides black. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and spray a couple layers of silver or gray or whatever and see how it turns out. And then we're going to let it dry and start assembling the wires and everything else, and then put the dash on and see the final result. All right, guys, here we go, and the SEMA truck is finished. I know this might be a little silly. I basically decided to go with the Mexican chrome. I did have the gray, but it kind of looked more like primer, so I decided to go ahead and go with the aluminum look. With everything on, nobody's gonna see it, but it's gonna actually brighten up underneath the dash, and it'll be a lot easier to work underneath the dash if I need to do some kind of wiring. And then when I run all the wires, stuff is not going to blend in, so I'll know exactly, I'll see where all the wires are. I also need to go ahead and cut this section out right here. That's where the fuse box is going to go. And then I need to trim this piece right here, this part. That's going to open up this area. And then I need to trim this section right here. That's for the cluster wiring that's going to go from here to the cluster. And this bracket right there, I'm gonna cut that off, but I'm gonna wait for this to dry really good, so I don't have to worry about it. That's what we got. The dash is pretty much chromed out, ready to go, and it's gonna go underneath the dash in style. All right, so I'm gonna let it dry out, and then I'm gonna start cutting all the things that I don't need, and we're gonna start assembling back together. Alright guys, and the dash is finally assembled. All the wires, the harnesses, all the ducking is done, and it's ready to go pretty much in the truck. All the loose ends are pretty much zip tied and put them in the little bundles. That way, when I'm going to be installing it in the truck, they're not going to be flopping everywhere. Not going to be in the way, not getting pinched. This piece is going to the body of the truck, and this piece, I believe that goes to the steering column, and these go to the fuse box. And also, I'm not sure if this bracket is going to be needed, but I'm going to see how I mount my fuse box, and then if I don't need this bracket, I'm just going to chop it off so it's not in the way, so it's not messing, you know, with the wires or whatnot. And also, my harness had 2 grounds right here, so I basically grinded down to bare metal and then put the grounds, 2 grounds right there, and then I just kind of bolted them through the frame right here, and that should be good to go. And I'm still not sure what to do with this, whatever that is. I'm not sure what that is. Sensor of some kind, maybe? Don't know, but I'm just gonna leave it zip tied up for now, because with the vent helper it might be in the way right there, so I might have to put it somewhere else, because one of the vents will go right here, one of the vents will go right here, and this box was originally here in this spot, but with the vent helper we don't need that box, so that kind of frees up a lot of space right here, so it makes it a lot better to work with. With other vent brackets, you do need this piece, so in this case I won't need it, so we'll see how this works out. Alright, and the last thing that we need to do in order to put the dash into the truck is install the cluster helper from SwapHelper.com, this piece right here. Basically, I'm going to go ahead and follow the diagram, mark all of the wires that I have on my truck before I cut anything. I'm going to find all of them exactly where they are, mark them before I cut them. I have this diagram that came with the kit as well that shows you, because there's some wires that are actually identical, so that will show you the wires as well to confirm what you have, what you don't have. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started, mark everything, and start cutting, start soldering, and install the harness. Got everything labeled on the dash itself. I didn't cut any wires yet because I still want to double check everything. Everything is labeled. The only wire that's not labeled is the gray with the orange stripe. That's the one that I'm gonna just clip off and cap it. That one is for the fuel signal, but there's another one that's actually providing fuel signal to the cluster, so this one's just the extra that I'm not gonna need. And if your truck, like my truck for example, has two wires with the 4x4 and it has the brown, yellow, and the light blue and black, those get pretty much connected together to a 4x4 low on the cluster helper. And one more thing that was kind of confusing me is the connector number 2, the middle one. This is a Ford diagram from Ford. These were marked pretty much backwards. If you take the plug, and it's like that, just like it is in the picture, and that's how it is in the picture, like that. Basically, as you can see, I whited out the numbers on the right because they were actually numbered 1 on here, and then it went down, so it went from top to bottom 16. And if you look at the numbers right here on top, 1 light brown red, that's where 1 is on the bottom. So if you hold it like this, the bottom is 1, but it was actually 16. So we got 1 here is light blue and red, and that's what it is. 1 light blue right here on the bottom, light blue, red. So that's the correct way. That's kind of one thing I was a little bit confused, because wiring to me is, you know, it's a new world. I don't do wiring. I do mostly rough work. But honestly, it's a good out of comfort experience. That way I get to learn a little bit more about wiring. Honestly, I always wanted to be good with wiring, but I never felt comfortable doing them. So yeah, that's the only thing that I had to correct on this diagram, is to number these backwards. They were numbered backwards, so I numbered them correctly how they should be. And as far as the harness that goes to the cluster, these are the wires that I will not need, because my truck is a manual transmission, and these are for the automatic transmission trucks. So basically you got transmission 1, 2, 3, and 4, and also it has a transmission temperature line, which I don't have on my cluster. I'm not going to be running transmission temperature, so I'm going to cut all these off, and then I'm going to cap them off so they're protected and so they don't short. And if you're going to be doing the cluster helper on your truck, probably you're going to have an automatic transmission. So you will be looking at this chart right here. So you got the PCM right here. This one right here, right there. This is the harness that goes to the dash, and then you got the PCM right here. So you're going to have to unbolt this one, remove it, and find the wires that you need to splice into. And so you're basically going to be looking for white, black, and that's going to connect to cluster helper tan. And then you're going to have a light blue, yellow connecting to a light blue on the cluster helper. And then you got a light blue and black connecting to a cluster helper brown. And then you got a yellow and black connecting to cluster helper violet. So all these are already labeled on the harness as well. So basically just need to find those and splice into them. And since I'm going to be running the boost sensor as well, I ended up basically making these kind of plugs on the end. I don't have anything else to use. I would suggest getting some kind of actual automotive plug, but honestly for me that's going to work just fine. My cluster has a boost gauge inside. It doesn't have transmission coolant. It only has engine heat, battery, and fuel level. And to get the boost in the cluster, I'm going to use this piece that goes into the AIH hole. And the kit comes with pretty much this sensor, the wire, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the extra wire from the cluster helper. So basically it's long enough to go all the way to the AIH hole, which would this be mounted. So basically what I'm going to do is I basically soldered two pieces right here. So now that I have everything soldered, I kind of soldered it in steps. That way it's not all together. You know, it just went in a step. That way when I shrink wrap it and go over it, it's not going to be like a big bump in the center. So now that I have my little shrink wraps, I'm going to go ahead and get those shrunk. And then over all that, I'm gonna go with another sleeve that separates in the middle, and I'm gonna wrap the whole piece all the way to the end, and that should be done. And here's the harness that's gonna plug in to here, and that's gonna go to the sensor mounted where the AIH was on the intercooler piping. So now what I'm gonna do is to double check everything is correct. I'm gonna basically go down the list. I'm gonna find the black and yellow, and make sure the number is correct and the cluster helper color that it goes to, and then I cut that off and then go down the list, cut them all off, and then I start soldering to this harness right here. We got the black and yellow, which is 608, black and yellow 608 number 6 at 1 2 3 4 5 6, and that's 608 black and yellow, and that's going to light green, and we got light green, airbag in, going to black and yellow. So basically I'm going to run down a list, do all these, and then get them soldered in together, and we'll see what we got. Alright, and here's what we got with the wires so far on the back. And here are the wires that we have coming out of the front. I'm basically going to tuck them in neatly like that, and then it'll be plugged in to the module, I think like so. Module goes like this. So let's take these two screws out. Okay, perfect. And then this harness that goes from the cluster to the cluster helper, you want to make sure you plug this in correctly. You gotta have the red stripe, which is this. It's kind of like pink but red stripe. You want to make sure that the red stripe goes on the driver's side, so facing left. It goes in there pretty nice and tight, so make sure it's nice and straight, goes in leveled. And then this side goes only one way, so you want to make sure it goes to the correct cluster that you have. I have 8 to 10, so you don't want to plug it into 11 to 16 because that's going to mess it up. So you want to plug it into 8 to 10, or if you have 11 to 16, then plug it into 11 to 16. So we're going to plug it into 8 to 10 cluster, like that. Make sure it's nice and snug. And we don't want to have like a weird bend on the cable, and there's plenty of room on top, so it doesn't have to be super tight. And now we're gonna plug in the cluster. I'm doing this temporary. I'm gonna take it off. I'm basically just seeing how it goes. Goes in like that, goes in one way, and tightens down with the clamp. And now we're good to go inside. Alright, and the cluster is in temporary, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it before I put it in the truck because I don't need it. You know, I don't need the extra weight or extra things flopping around. So for now, we know that everything is fitting good. The dash is ready to go, and we're going to be installing it soon. So in the next episode, I'm going to be cleaning up the firewall, removing all this stuff on the firewall, and we're going to be installing sound deadening and insulation on the firewall, and then we can put in the dash. Once the dash is in the truck, then I'm going to be installing this USB cable. That's going to go, and that's going to connect to the cluster, and that's basically going to be in the truck. So whenever you need to update the cluster helper, you can just reach out the cable somewhere inside the dash, and you don't have to remove the cluster in order to do updates. So guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a bit long, but I try to cram in as much as possible into this video. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, give it a like. If you're new, please subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.